Oh, there you go. All right, I'm going to mute everybody, and then I'll unmute you, Alex.
Sure.
Oh. That says unknown caller. Actually, Alex, why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself?
Okay. Is that good?
That's better. Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
All right. So, Alex, thank you for joining the Tesla Owners Club of Orange County for your second meetup.
Yes.
It's been several years since you joined us in Orange County for our event. Basically just hanging out, and you took the opportunity to check out the JDMO at that time because for those of you that are on here that know Alex is a professional race driver and motorsport fans and everything, I knew him as a fellow Tesla guy on the forums, and we communicate that way, and shared interest in the clean tech space, and then only to find out the guy's a professional racer. So he you can blame him to get me into watching at least Formula E for sure. So today's subject really, Alex, is to get to know you. So feel free to let everybody know a bit about yourself, what your passions, your profession, and anything else you want to share at the moment. And someone's doing a whiteboard.
Well,
Yep, there you go. That's awesome. And as I've mentioned to all the participants, feel free to unmute if you want to ask a question, or do it in chat as well. Take it away, Alex.
Sure. Well, yeah. Hello, everyone. Again, to some of you, it was awesome I was racing in Long Beach at the time, in GTs, in the American Sports Car Championship, and yeah, took the opportunity to meet up with Dennis and come and see maybe some of you. I've got to apologize, I don't actually remember if I have met any of you before or not, but yeah, a little bit about myself. My main job is as a racing driver. Been racing since I was like 10 years old in go-karts, and yeah, I took a fairly conventional process through racing, I guess, in terms of the going up the motorsport ladder through single seaters, and then the last sort of I guess 7 or 8 years was in GT racing, and still am to this day, to be honest. But yeah, just recently, the last 2 years, got an awesome opportunity from BMW to go into Formula E with them, and that was like yeah, an absolute dream of mine, because I would say for the last 10 years or so, in my personal life, I got far more interested in sustainability, initially through renewable energy, and then EVs as well. And yeah, got my Tesla in 2012, which was one of the, I don't know exactly one of the last ones or not, but yeah, one of the last few in the UK to be sold. So I'm a little bit of I guess, a late adopter in terms of the Roadster story, but I guess all of us are very early adopters in the EV story.
Well, Alex, I don't know if you know, but the Tesla's added several models since the Roadster.
Yeah, exactly, right. And it's been cool to see that journey, because when I bought the car, I really remember not doing anywhere near the amount of research, looking back now, that I think I should have done. I just loved the car and thought, this is awesome. And I remember the first time it really struck me as in terms of like transport and thinking that we needed to do something different was I was driving a Golf at the time, a Volkswagen Golf, and it was the third time in a week that I was filling up with petrol. Did a lot of driving around. I was like, this is just ridiculous, just pouring fuel in it, burning it, pouring it in, burning it constantly. All the time. My main job as a racing driver up until being involved in Formula E is doing exactly that for even less reason. We're just driving around in a circle trying to go a few tenths faster here or there. I mean, it's good fun, it's a sport, but ultimately there is a part of me that thinks, what on earth are we achieving? It's terrible from an environmental point of view. But those two things in my life have been I guess still kept fairly separate until now. Now I'm in Formula E. But yeah, the first step I made really was to get a hybrid to start with, because that was, as a uneducated person, I guess, and EVs really weren't particularly known about, I would say, back in, it would have been 2010 when I got the hybrid. And yeah, I was just like, man, this has done nothing for me. This has changed the amount of fuel I use by, I don't know, maybe 5%. I don't know. So that wasn't the end result that I wanted. And so yeah, then just came across I can't remember where I saw the first mention of a Roadster, but yeah, I just remember going down and test driving it and just thinking, this thing is awesome. Just from a pure driving point of view initially, and then yeah, when you really think through the pure electric side of things, it seemed to make a lot of sense. And I just jumped into it. I didn't really research how many charging stations there were, how viable it was going to be. I just trusted the Tesla salesman at the time saying that, oh yeah, you're fine. There's whatever there was. I think there was 9 HPCs across the UK, and trusted him that it would all be fine. And yeah, it was a really fun journey, to be honest. I would say I averaged about 20,000 miles a year for the first few years. Drove it a lot, and yeah, to think of where we were back then to now, it's amazing to see all the infrastructure and stuff that's being installed.
You were like early 20s when you got your Roadster, right? I mean, this was pre-kids, because I believe you have, what, 3 kids?
Yes, yeah, very much.
Can't fit any of them in the car with you, so.
Yeah, to be honest, the last few years I went through a bit of an issue with it. Had a small battery problem, and I guess trusted someone that turned out not to be able to, or they were too busy basically to fix my car. So ended up the battery got completely bricked. So now I haven't been able to drive it for the last 3 years, unfortunately, waiting on Tesla to kickstart their battery program again. But yeah, with the 3 kids, it would be pretty difficult to I guess prioritize and give each one of them a go. And I'm sure I don't know whether child seats even work in the Tesla. It's not something I've explored, but
I've actually seen someone at a meet, must have been easily 7 years ago, who drove up with his Roadster with his kid in front with it, in a child seat. So I suppose as long as the cops don't bust you, and whatever the laws are in your country, you could do it. I don't know how they secured it either. I mean, it must be one of those where they fit the seat belt behind the seat and to get it snug. But that's so. Do you remember who introduced you to Tesla, or did you read about it, or?
Yeah, that's the thing that I kick myself about. I can't remember that moment when I first found out about Tesla. Yeah, I mean, there certainly wouldn't have been any adverts or anything in the papers or online or anything. I don't think, anyway, back then. I don't think Tesla in the UK was spending any money on marketing. Yeah, it's a shame. I can't remember that moment, but I certainly remember the first test drive with Jan, who was the UK manager. And I'm just thankful that they took me seriously enough, because I guess there weren't too many 23-year-olds wanting to genuinely try them out to buy. There might have been a few chances, but yeah, no, really pleased that I got that chance.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm sorry to hear that it's bricked at the moment, but at least you have the battery warranty that Tesla's on the hook to have to replace it. So that's a good thing. I mean, they don't offer that warranty anymore. I mean, they have like the Infinite ones that originally came out, or they adjusted it for the Model S and the Model X. And I think they pulled that back now. And then the Model 3, I think it's pretty short. I think it's only like 200,000 miles or 150. I mean, I don't pay attention to that because, 2 out of our 3 cars are all out of warranty anyway. So, and the battery warranty will be gone in the 2013 next year. So,
sure. Yeah, I mean, again, at the time, I didn't really know what I was going in for, and to be honest, there was a chance, looking back, that the battery warranty was worth nothing because Tesla might not have made it. But yeah, I think it's probably not the most common thing for owners to have bought that battery warranty. It seems in my discussions with Tesla that there are actually only a handful of people that have still got one to exercise anyway. But yeah, having bought the car in 2012, I think it lasts for 10 years. I remember that there was a pricing point of if you took it before 7 years, you had to pay a bit more, and after 7 years, the price decreased. So maybe it's not such a bad thing that we're waiting a bit. But I'm fortunate to also have a BMW i3 and an X5 plug-in hybrid as well. So it's not like it was my only EV that I was relying on to drive electric as such. So pretty fortunate.
Yeah, and you can fit the family in those cars.
Yeah. I mean, I 100% would far rather have the Roadster as well and be able to do my drives that I do on my own in it. But yeah, fingers crossed it'll happen again pretty soon.
Yeah, so you just left BMW on the Formula E side to go for Mahindra, and I know that one of the funny conversations we've had is how a lot of your fellow drivers, as a race car driver that is tied to a manufacturer, part of your benefit is the ability to have their cars. And why don't you share with everybody what your fellow race car drivers thought when your first choice was a BMW i3 from the BMW race team?
Yeah, well, I mean, it goes back, I would say, close to 5 years now, which is when I was driving GT cars. So I was driving the M6 and the M8 GT, where we used a lot of petrol, put it that way, and all the drivers around it. All the cars we raced were purely petrol powered, and so every other driver's choosing the M4, the M3, M5, whatever they can get basically, or the X5M or something. And I had a 4 Series, just a 420i to start with, and I was like, come on guys, you've released the i3. I'd really quite like that, and I had to ask pretty hard actually for them to give me an i3. Had to go down and meet them, and I don't really know. Maybe there was some internal loopholes to those internal things to go through to try and get it, because it probably wasn't a standard car, and maybe there wasn't as much profit in it for them to be able to just give it out to whoever wanted one. But anyway, in the end, I did convince them, and thankfully been able to have an i3 for like the last 5 years. I think I've gone through every battery iteration, and started off with the range extender, and now got the pure BEV, and it's nice to see that journey. But I don't know what's going to happen with the Mahindra situation. I don't think they sell cars in the UK, so that might have to. Well, hopefully the Tesla's repaired in time to be able to then rely on that.
So Jamie asked to continue on our i3 conversation. Is your current i3, is it an i3S?
Yes.
So at least it's sporty. Does the S have a wider tire? I mean,
yes. I mean, thankfully, to be honest, that's probably the biggest change is the tire size. It does have a bit more power and torque, but a small increase, and I think the body is lowered slightly. But fundamentally, the biggest thing is just it's got a bigger tire and therefore more grip, and is a more secure car in the corners, I would say. It's pretty good fun, but for my personal driving.
Well, as a professional driver, you've had this ability to try out all these cars and the like. And one of the things that you've seen some of my tweets and stuff. One of the things that I posted on the forums and on tweets to get people to join us for this event is you're one of the very few people in the world that can compare the driving experience of a Tesla with the driving experience of a Formula E race car. So if you could expound on what that's like and what the differences are and what the similarities are in the experience, that would. And one thing that most people probably don't know is not only were you a professional driver this past couple of years with BMW and coming up with Mahindra, but if I remember correctly, you were a test driver for the original Formula E first gen, were you not?
No, to be honest, I wasn't a test driver. I did some testing, but I would It was more
Okay.
for like a magazine articles, so more for journalists, for me to give
Okay.
feedback to them, for them to be able to write articles. So no,
Okay.
that was pretty much Lucas deGrassi and I think a couple of other guys who actually I don't know who they were, but
Okay. Well,
wow.
as I said,
The
I'm not a
differences.
motorsport guy, so the fact that you got to test the car to me, so that's what I meant by that. But if there's a professional designation, then please thank you for clarifying for everybody else.
Well, yeah, I mean, yes, I did drive the Gen 1 before Season 1 started. Yes, put it that way. But wow, the differences and similarities between a Formula E car and a Roadster. I mean, to be honest, comparing any single-seater race car to a road car, it's very different in terms of the general driving experience. Being obviously fully exposed in a single-seater, no windscreen, and you can generally see the tires and get all the air noise when you're driving along, all the buffeting, versus a nice comfy road car. That's the biggest difference, to be honest. In terms of the electric side of things, there are certainly very clear similarities, I would say, going along with just the standard things that everyone knows about EVs in terms of the very instant throttle response. That's there in both cars. The regen level, it's probably a bit stronger in Formula E. I mean, we regen up to 250 kilowatts, but it's I guess because we're on circuits and you need to slow down for corners, and normally for those corners you'd be hard on the brakes, and so your reference doesn't feel that dissimilar to comparing the Roadster's regen to how much you would normally decelerate on the road. On the road you'd rarely just hammer the brakes and be fully in the ABS, and you don't drive like that, do you? So I guess the difference between a normal braking in a road car and using the regen is similar to that in a Formula E car. Obviously, we do capture more energy under regen than in the Roadster. But I mean, I'd certainly choose the Roadster on a commute, which I think most of us would probably agree. Saying that versus many other road cars might not be such a normal thing, but it's I mean, a Formula E car. It's just it's so complex, even for race cars. To be honest, the systems that we have on a Formula E car, the fact that it's electric enables us to do so many things with the electric motor that we couldn't do with a conventional internal combustion engine. The benefits of having regen and mechanical brakes mean that we can do some pretty interesting things, pairing the two of those up and using them to do different things to how the car behaves in the corner. And because we've got a brake-by-wire system in the Formula E car, which means there's basically a computer which will decide how much mechanical brake and how much motor braking, electrical motor braking we can get. And then we will always use the regen first, up to a point where the brake pedal demand asks for more than what the motor can give, and then we'll introduce the mechanical brakes. But there's a brake-by-wire system that's working that out, and with the amount of yaw that the car has, you can change how that brake bias shifts, because it's just a computer deciding how much rear torque you have versus the pedal pressure. So I've gone into a lot of detail. I'm sorry if I'm confusing, guys. I'm trying to manage it to make it interesting, but not super
No, that's great.
complicated.
Steve from Northern California, fellow Roadster owner, had a question I think is related to that. Does it feel like the regen and friction are blended smoothly?
Once we have done our development, yes. In the first stages, there are moments when that doesn't happen particularly well. But the really critical thing is understanding the brake mu, we call it, the friction of the, as you call them, friction no, you sorry, I'm thinking of rotors and things. Sorry, of the mechanical brakes, working out the different friction levels at the different temperatures as well, because on a mechanical brake, obviously when they're cold, the friction level is fairly low. As it heats up, that increases, and that all plays a very big part in how to blend it smoothly and make it a predictable feeling under braking. And so, yeah, quite a lot of research and development is done on just trying to get that software map done as best as possible.
Okay. Before I get to Jamie's question, I had one that went along with your discussion on how there's a lot of things you can tweak with Formula E that's different from the ICE equivalent race cars. And, not being a novice motorsport fan and mainly Formula E fan, one thing that I always enjoy, and you always see my fan boosts that I tweet out, and you still haven't gotten, I haven't convinced enough people to give you that fan boost.
No.
At least you get into attack mode, and with the attack mode you get that additional access to power, which I guess is part of the controls that you get for that. But I noticed that in Berlin, it seemed like every time someone went into attack mode, when you're forced to have to do it twice, almost everyone that had to do that dropped and stayed behind where they were originally in the race. I mean, most people don't seem to be able to catch up. So why? I mean, shouldn't you have more capability in there? Is that because the tracks are so short you can't make use of all that power? Or what was it about Berlin that made it seem that pretty much all the drivers, whenever they went to attack mode, they ended up actually not at the same part of the race that they were in, unless there was a crash or something.
Yeah, so in Berlin, I guess the one big fundamental thing is how much time loss there is from taking the attack mode. And so sometimes the attack zone is pretty close to the racing line, or it's on a corner where you don't lose so much time. Whereas in Berlin, we'd be losing like 1.5 to 2 seconds when we took attack mode relative to just staying on the normal racing line. And we would have the attack mode for about 3 laps in time, and you'd only be gaining like what was it? It's about 3/4 of a second per lap by being in attack mode. So you're benefiting from being in attack mode theoretically, but the only scenario where you would benefit properly would be if you fell back into completely clear space. So that was kind of the challenge that most people were trying to do. But as soon as you take attack mode and somebody actually overtakes you, the likelihood is that then when you're coming back through using that extra power, you're going to be slowed down by the car ahead in some corners, not be as efficient. And then as soon as you try to overtake a bit and catch him and don't make an overtake, then you've used energy and that's it. You're done. You can't continue, obviously, over-consuming. And so, yeah, it was a really difficult tactical game, I would say, to try and use it in the best possible way. And so quite often you'd find yourself taking attack mode, having extra power, and actually just finding yourself not able to deploy it all to its full advantage. It's a bit frustrating sometimes.
Yeah, no, that was one of the things that was screwy when I watched it. I'm like, it doesn't seem to be helpful during that race. And thanks for explaining that. So Jamie had a question regarding, it's on the chat.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, if you guys want to unmute and ask the question instead, that's perfectly fine and acceptable. That's part of why we have it as a meeting format. So Jamie, if you want to just unmute, that'd be good.
Okay, I wasn't sure if we could just unmute ourselves like that.
No one wanted to call on you, then go ahead and do so. That would be good.
Okay. So yeah, well, now I have 2 questions. And one was about how Formula E feels in comparison to other ICE single-seaters, because I know you've done F3 and Formula Renault, but a while ago. And any more modern single-seaters you might have driven since then, like in testing capacity or anything like that. I know a lot of people say they don't like watching Formula E because they think it's too slow on the top speeds, which, there's a lot of reasons for that, and I get it. But I think it's really exciting because all the cars have such similar performance levels, and you've got a lot of close racing. Last season, I think, was maybe the best season of motorsport I've ever seen. Not this one, but the previous one, 2019.
Season 5.
Yeah.
That's because they finally added Alex to the race, right? It was your rookie season, Alex.
It was amazing. I mean, I know part of it was because of the qualifying rules, but like those are great rules. I love it because the cream still, like good drivers still did well on average, but you still had a lot of other really great excitement going through, 8 different leaders in 8 races or whatever. But anyway, so I'm just wondering about how you feel about the comparison between the performance and, in terms of which one feels more interesting or more fun on the brakes or in acceleration or on, just corner exit specifically, anything like that, like any particular bits that you really like about the Formula E or that you think that are still not as fun to drive as the other traditional single seaters.
Sure.
And also, the other follow-up was what you think about the energy-saving aspect of Formula E races. I think it's great because it adds another dimension, but do you feel like it's too much of a restriction? Anyway, I'm done. Go ahead.
Sure. I guess firstly, just on that energy-saving thing, I think it's a fantastic part of Formula E and really fundamental to the racing being exciting to watch and exciting to participate in, because it enables people to decide when to use their energy and when to save, and everyone has to coast and everyone has to regen to make it to the end of the race. And so it's a really fun tactical game to try and push someone into a corner where they can't defend. They just can't do it. And so it's an awesome feeling when you do get that, where you're holding all the cards when you're behind. Obviously, if you're the car ahead and you've spent your energy and you've got to stick to your energy target to make it to the end, it's a pain in the backside, but it's great. It makes it really exciting. Certainly last season, where the rules under safety car were different, where we didn't get an energy reduction like we do this year. Quite often we'd have the end of races being flat out because you wouldn't consume the energy under safety car as we're going slowly when they're cleaning up a crash or something. And then we'd have enough energy just to drive flat out, and we don't need to be efficient. And then the racing was not that exciting, to be honest, from a driver's point of view. Yes, you're going faster, but it's not creating those overtaking opportunities. So I think that side of Formula E is great.
Before I get on to Alistair's question, I want to add to Jamie's question on something I was wondering about. So you always see the battery percentages, the state of charge, basically, on Formula E for every driver, especially towards the end of the race. And as a Roadster owner, you know that when it says 0, you've just killed your battery, right? It's flat out. So the BMS for Formula E, when it says 0, I assume there's some reserve to there. And what stops them from, drivers going past that? I mean, do you get a penalty or something? Or what's the story with the state of charge in Formula E at the end? Because there's been a few races where the winning driver goes right through it and they were at 0, and it was like, okay, that's good.
Yeah, and then they make it back to the garage, amazingly. No, they're not some. There's not been a loophole in physics, I don't think. Basically, I think the battery capacity, the actual battery capacity, is 54 kilowatt hours. But we are only allowed to use 52 kilowatt hours during the race. And so the state of charge that you see on the TV is made up state of charge, obviously, on using 52 kilowatt hours. So when we start the race, we have to start the race with at least 97% of actual battery capacity. And then from that, we get 52 kilowatt hours to use during the race. And so then 0 that you see on the TV is still like, I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's like 4% of actual battery. That's that.
So that's another difference between Formula E and Roadster. Then it's 2 kilowatt hours of a battery that you would have had in a brand new Roadster.
Yeah,
Back in
I
the
mean,
day.
it's not even the difference between standard and I guess it's more like performance mode, right?
Yeah.
Where you've got that little bit at the bottom, but certainly not in range mode. Yeah, I've had that in very early days. In like the second week I had the car, I just put it in range mode and didn't know much about it, and just cruising home thinking, yeah, I'll get to home on 0, and then suddenly the range goes to the dashed lines. I was like, what? I've still got 20 miles to get home now, so that was creeping home. But learned my lesson quickly. But yeah, just going quickly back to the difference between Formula E and other single seaters. I mean, there's so much to go through, but I would say the main differences are, firstly, Formula E is that the car itself, the bodywork is, I think, designed around efficiency rather than maximum cornering performance. So there's a lot less downforce compared to, say, a Formula 3 car. And I mean, Formula 3 cars nowadays are really, really impressive, the amount of downforce that they have. You're pulling probably close to 3 Gs in a Formula 3 car. And yeah, that's pretty serious. If you did that in a Formula E car, obviously so much energy is being sapped through drag. Yes, okay, you get the downforce, but the drag is there as well, and the energy usage would be super high to do a 45-minute race. But I mean, the fact that it's electric opens us up to using the electric motor to do a lot of technical cool things. But from a driver's point of view, really the fundamental difference is also the tires, because we've got the treaded tires that work in the wet and the dry, and they have some pretty unique characteristics compared to, say, a slick tire that you would drive in every other single-seater series around the world. And so, yeah, the tires have a pretty low operating window. So that's why in qualifying, you'll see us crawling around fairly slowly normally if the ambient temperature is fairly high, and then just going flat out for one lap, because if we were to have a fast out lap, we would start overheating the tires halfway through our 250 kilowatt push lap. So we have to look after the tires and work out how to get the performance from them. They're the number one critical item on any race car, and Formula E is no different. But I mean, Formula E cars, they're designed for Formula E circuits, and so the whole thing works so well together. I think if you were to put a Formula E car on a conventional racetrack, yes, it would be slower than a Formula 3 car. Top speeds wouldn't be that bad, actually. I mean, our motor, I think, with the rev limiter we've got on it, it's going to take us up to 240k, 240 kilometers an hour, I think. I mean, it's not slow at all. But I mean, a Formula 3 car might do 270 kilometers an hour, maybe 280. But so it's in a sort of similar region. Top speed's really not slow, but you just don't see it all the time on Formula E circuits, because they're normally in city centres. They're fairly tight, they're twisty, they're bumpy, and they've been designed, the Formula E car, for those types of circuits. So they're good for what they're designed for, I would say.
So Alistair had a question. Alistair, if you want to unmute, or do you want me to read it for you?
Sure, Dennis, I can ask you. Okay, so this is I'm chairman of EVA Scotland, so I've got to ask a question that relates to Scotland.
Of course, Alistair.
So in Formula One, there were a fair few famous Scottish drivers. For example, Jim Clark, Jackie Stewart, David Coulthard. Are there any Scottish drivers in Formula E?
No. However, we do have a team manager who's Scottish. The two, actually, sorry. So Alan McNish is a pretty famous, I would say, sports car driver from Scotland, and he runs the Audi Formula E team. And also we've got Susie Wolff, who's her maiden name was Stoddart, so she was Susie Stoddart when she raced herself. But she's now married to Toto Wolff, who's the Mercedes Formula One team principal. and she actually she's the team manager for the Venturi Formula E team. So there's certainly some Scottish influence in the paddock, but just not on the race driver front.
Well, that's good to hear. Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. And Phil, you had a question as well?
I just okay. I
Go
just
ahead.
very local question. Orange County Club. We loved having Long Beach as a venue for Formula E. In fact, I had a BMW i3, and BMW a few years ago allowed us to. We tried a Guinness World Record event for the most electrified cars gathered in one place at the same time, electrified BMWs, and they allowed us to drive the track at Long Beach before in between qualifying at one point, in a parade basically. But we loved having it at Long Beach, and I don't keep up enough with it to understand why it was canceled at Long Beach. But is there any chance that anybody knows about for that venue coming back?
I don't, unfortunately, think that it's looking particularly likely in the next few years, put it that way. I think everyone really enjoyed their time in Long Beach. I wasn't a part of the series when it was there, but I've raced in Long Beach myself twice in American sports cars. And yeah, it's a cool track. It's a cool venue, but yeah, I don't know. It was touted as being a possibility for a solution to us getting some racing in this season. After a load of all the racing basically was cancelled until they worked out to do 6 races in Berlin. But that didn't obviously pan out, and yeah, I don't think it's a realistic option for the coming years, unfortunately.
Are they still racing Formula Ice cars in Long Beach, or is that all over completely?
Yeah.
No, I think IndyCar goes there. I'm pretty sure it did last season. I don't know what this season's gonna do. Everything's very much changed, but yeah, no, I raced there in 2017 and 18 in GT cars. So yeah, no, it's a cool track, pretty unique, but it's cool to do street races and driving around turn 1, turn 2, around the fountain. It's really cool.
Damn loud there. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a lot nicer to hear the Formula E zipping by. Like it's very science fiction feel.
Mm-hmm.
Evan, you have a question.
Sure, thanks, Dennis, and thank you, Alexander, for spending the time with us today. Knowing there have been a few sports car series for electrics that have kind of had a little bit of a shaky start, do you see that as becoming a little more viable as the years go forward?
Yeah, I mean, I've met Mark Gemmell from Electric GT, and just seemed like I spoke to him in the early days when he was really kicking it off. And it's a shame that that's not worked out. I think the biggest fundamental problem is just funding. It's just money, and motorsports is it's certainly amateur motorsport. It's a rich man's club, and the core group of guys, I would say at the moment anyway, either love their historic racing, which also includes single-seaters as well, or generally I would say it's more on the endurance racing side, where they can get quite a lot of seat time, and yeah, I guess it's just because those are the championships that are available. I guess then you've got some hill climb stuff as well, which is probably more realistic, as we've seen already, for electric cars to be involved in stuff like Pikes Peak. I just think the costs involved in getting electric race cars to a performance level which will make them similar to an ICE car, whilst making them able to go for as long as an ICE car. Physics is what it is, and to have an electric car to be able to drive using 500 horsepower for an hour, flat out. It's just not the place for EVs at the moment. And I guess that's where Formula E really has found its niche, perfect place, I would say, is that it's been designed in a championship around efficiency, where the rules are tailored to what an electric car is good at. And that's obviously not to say that electric cars are slow or lesser than an ICE car in any way, really, if you were to design it purely for that purpose. But to get a car that can do everything like an ICE car can, with petrol just being able to be refueled in, a matter of 20 seconds, with 120 litres of petrol or something, which we do in endurance racing. When you look at the fundamental amount of energy in a litre of petrol, it's just ridiculous, And so getting around that issue of being able to drive a really fast car using up obviously a lot of energy, and to be able to make it user friendly and be refueled quickly, it's just not there, unfortunately. But I don't know. I think at the moment, still in motorsports, it's pretty early days for pure electric racing, despite Formula E being what it is now, and everyone in motorsport fully respects it as a absolute leader of motorsports around the world. It's, I would say, only really existing because a lot of manufacturers want to be involved in it. If you were to bring that down to a more amateur level motorsport series, it's just, I guess, a little bit more difficult because it's going to be expensive.
Thanks, Alex. Jamie, you've got a bunch of questions. So you've got
I'm probably the biggest motorsport fan here. So going back to the energy consumption, I was just wondering what the units are on those numbers that you call out during the race to your engineers about the energy consumption when you guys are like 30.86, because it doesn't sound like kilowatt hours or percentage to me. And then the other question was, how many years down the line do you think it'll be until we see this first EV versus ICE championships? And which series do you think it'll be? I think it's going to be Le Mans and battery swapping machines as a Garage 56 entry, probably in the next 5 years or so.
Interesting. Firstly, the numbers that we call out, most people now have coded energy numbers. And so there's an encryption program that I think every team will change their codes each race, so you can't obviously reverse engineer it.
Got it. Multi-21. Multi-21.
Yeah, that was a swapping positions call, but so basically we'll have an energy number that, whatever we say, the dash readout will tell us to say 432, and that will mean, I don't know what, 48.6 kilowatt hours remaining in the battery or whatever, and so that's how it works. And we do then have a lot of other settings that we discuss and change on the car, on the dials in our car in BMW. We have from A through to or Papa, I think, to P. And so all of those then have subsettings. They'll have numbers. And so, it might be that we need to change a setting on kilo, which might change something on the electric motor or the brake bias or whatever. So we'll also talk about those letters and numbers as well.
And then the other one was EV versus ICE racing.
EV versus ICE, yes. That's a difficult one. I think Rallycross is going to be a really good place for EVs to be, and
they just had a race
development for some time.
Someone just had a race with that. Some Croatian team or something just did an EV rallycross
Okay, cool.
race. So they did
Yeah,
well.
I know that the World Rallycross has been talking about going all electric for some time. I mean, the mixing petrol and EVs, that's really quite difficult in terms of balancing the performance of the cars and making it fair. So I don't know whether that will actually ever happen or not. Maybe in more of like an amateur series, sort of like run what you brung and everyone just gets in a race together. That might happen, I guess. But in terms of a fairly high-end professional sport, I think World Rallycross WRX, I think, is what it's shortened to, is probably the next thing to go full EV. Because I mean, their races are only 6 laps anyway, or 5 laps, I can't remember. And they're on short tracks, and they're quick, fast races, and a perfect place to have a super high power EV that doesn't need a massive battery to make it heavy. And yeah, there's no loss to the end show, I guess. Only benefits of making it EV and more relevant for the manufacturers.
I don't know if you guys are looking at chat. Evan mentions Formula Drift is working on it as well. I don't know what that is, so.
Well, then, yeah, I don't know what that is either. So the drifting scene is very, although obviously they use race cars and even BMWs are pretty good for drifting, I think. Obviously not talking from personal experience, I would never do that in the road, but yeah, being front engine, they're pretty good, I think. But yeah, I don't know much about drifting. I occasionally see them, but I wouldn't suggest that I know much at all.
So one of the other things that you and I talked about a lot, and we haven't covered yet, is what you do with Zero Carbon World, which is a UK registered charity where you're the chairman of. And the way I remember it is destination chargers before Tesla did destination chargers. Basically, it was the same strategy, and I think that's part of one of the things that I know that you had been doing. So, if there's anything you want to share about that with the crowd now, just to throw it a little bit. I mean, we can jump back to racing stuff if people want to talk about that, but I want to make sure to give that a shout out as well.
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, Zero Carbon World, it's a charity that Kevin Sharp started 10 years ago or so, back in the day when there was pretty much just the Roadster around, and I think he just wanted to create a network that was easy to use. So there's no memberships, there's no charge cards or anything like that. They're just dumb sockets that you can turn up and use. And yeah, we're about 700 charging stations now in the UK, which is pretty phenomenal. I mean, I got to give almost all of the credit to Kevin. He drove it as his enthusiasm was immense in the early days. He put quite a lot of money into it as well. Being honest, that doesn't happen without money. But yeah, the charity basically donates the charging stations to the location, many of them being bed and breakfasts, small tourist attractions, places where people would obviously use destination style charging. And yeah, I mean, it's been a phenomenal charity to be a part of. I initially just got in touch with them because I wanted to try and help install an HPC at a large hotel that seemed to make sense in terms of where the motorways were going. It was a really nice junction on the motorways to link three major roads together, which we were successful in doing. And then I got involved as a trustee and helped out as much as I could. To be honest, I used to do a lot more than I do now because I had the time, I didn't have kids, and my racing was slightly less intense. But now still as a chairman and trustee, we've been lucky to have some really enthusiastic trustees over the years. We've got a lady, Cara Nadine, who's just phenomenal. She's been around since the early days with Zero Carbon World, and yeah, just got a new guy, Dean Fielding, joined now, which is cool. You know, it's exciting to see where the charity's going. I mean, we're still a small, you know, we've just got 3 people working very much part-time to sort through applications and things. But it's nice to give back something. You know, I think I've got about 70 charging stations in my garage that's our stock that we're slowly going through, and it's just very nice feeling to send them out to these locations, knowing that it's going to make some people's life a little bit easier with an EV. So yeah, it's something that I wish I could give more time to and be a little bit more thorough in just getting on and getting them done and go out to the sites and things. But still, it's a nice thing.
Cool. So Alistair had a question on your opinion.
Yes,
on
Yeah,
EV charging facilities in the UK.
yeah. Maybe I can just chip in on this because earlier this evening I've been writing an agenda for a meeting that we're having on Friday with Transport Scotland, who provide the Charge Place Scotland network.
Yeah.
And obviously the situation in Scotland is different from the rest of the UK in terms of public charging. I just wondered what was your opinion of the EV charging network in the UK, and I guess we need to broaden out to the USA as well.
Well, I mean, I think the situation is improving substantially. I would say I don't want to throw anyone under the bus in terms of charging companies and things, because I fully appreciate in the early years it was new to everyone, and Ecotricity were the first people to delve into it really in terms of a proper nationwide rapid charging network. But as much as their enthusiasm was fantastic, I think everyone would be it's only being honest about the situation that those chargers have probably hampered some of the EV uptake in the UK in recent years. But obviously now things are moving on again with Ionity being here. Obviously from a Tesla point of view, the supercharger network is pretty sensible, I believe. Not owning a Model S or a 3 or an X, I don't actually use it, so I only am aware of it from just being interested, but I think it's pretty sensible. Yeah, I use the Polar network quite a lot to do the journeys that I need to do. But I mean, now we're starting to get quite a few options. I think that the final piece to the puzzle really is making it just super easy for somebody who's not got the fairly intricate knowledge of what charging providers networks to be a part of before you start a journey, so that you can just start a journey and just get to a charging point and use it without having to go through a process of downloading an app and registering your details and your card. And you know, it's still a process that I don't think is particularly helpful for the general EV uptake.
Yeah, I think it's
luckily plug-in chargers coming out, ISO 15118. I know Ionity is working on that, but obviously the car manufacturers have to, the OEMs have to put that in their vehicles as well, and the charging networks have to accept it. But there are equipment that's at least starting to roll out.
Absolutely. If that can become commonplace, then I think finally you've got a situation where that would actually be an improvement over petrol and diesel fill-up stations, right? Just to be able to plug in and forget about it, and you don't even have to go into a kiosk and not that interacting with people is a problem. I was going to say you don't have to interact with anyone. I'm fine with interacting with people, but it just takes a step out of the process and makes it easier. So yeah, we can go from what we've got now to actually a solution that's even more simple. Then that would be great.
Awesome. Next question. I don't know if you're unmuted, Vigdis, but Our friends from the California of Europe, also known as Norway, Vigdis, has a question for you. Yep. Do I need to unmute you? Let me unmute you. There.
Okay, I want. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm in the Tesla Owners Club Norway, and we have heard about the zero carbon world before. As in 2013, I think it was, we got inspired by the concept of putting up chargers where there weren't any before, and hotels and malls and places like that. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to put up as many as you have, but we got up some and around in Norway and a couple of places in one place in Sweden as well. And I was wondering, how would you do when you put it out? Do you pay for the charger itself, or do you also help them find an electrician and pay for the installation and things like that? It seems like they don't always have what's necessary to get the best out of to get a good charge.
Sure. Firstly, that's awesome to hear that Norway's got something similar, and Zero Carbon World helped to inspire that situation. But the setup with Zero Carbon World, I think we probably went through some of the difficulties in the early days before I was a part of the charity, where yes, you give the hardware to a site and they would just get a local electrician to install it, and then you'd, as an electric car driver, turn up and you realize that actually it's the other side of a flower bed and your cable doesn't reach because your charging port's not on the front of your car, and it just got there were a couple of times where the installation was poor, and so Kevin and the people involved in the charity in the early days came to a solution where we actually have some approved installers around the UK for different areas to try and help reduce costs as well, to try and keep it so that you have installers that are relatively local to different sections of the UK, and they go through it's not even a training, but a discussion with us really to explain what needs to happen. And I mean, these installers have been there for many years now, so they know what's necessary and know what's needed. So they have the criteria to install a good charging station. And in terms of our model of funding, we just donate the charging station. Then it's for the site to pay for the installation, and once we've donated it, they own the charging station. So it's not, I guess, fundamentally for the charity, it was very important for us not to be, I guess, liable to ongoing maintenance of these charging stations. As much as it would be lovely to be able to provide that, it would just sap funds from the charity so quickly if different sites did have some problems. So it's very much, we see it as a way for a site to get into EV charging, and okay, they might eventually want an end product that might be able to charge some more money for it, have a payment system installed, but the first step is that they're able to get that charging station for free and help, I guess, open their eyes to offering EV charging for their customers.
Okay. Thank you.
Right.
Yeah, we had a couple of places where we had to install a large transformer as well, so that was pretty expensive.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
but they got 22 kilowatts out of it, and that was good. So
Nice.
pretty popular.
Excellent. All good, Vigus? So, Evan, you've got the next question on Mahindra.
Sure. Here in California, Mahindra is mostly known for side-by-side off-road vehicles. But can you give us a little more insight into what they're doing with electrics on a more global scale?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's very early days for myself with Mahindra. I mean, actually, my contract doesn't actually start for another month, so I'm not really integrated into the company as such just yet. But I'm aware of some of the vehicles they produce in India and things, and yes, they're pickup trucks and stuff as well. But honestly, it's beyond their involvement with Pininfarina, where they're developing the super crazy EV hypercar. I'm not involved in it enough just yet to know the inside stories of what's coming in the future and stuff. Sorry.
We can check back in after first session of media training.
Yep. Thanks.
You can tweet it out, Alex. I guess one of the things I keep learning from this is the third time we've done this for the club, where we have the Meet Revolutionary series. And on the first one, I forgot to get the socials out for our first guest, and luckily he was smart enough to do that on his own. The last one we had, I remember to ask, so I'm remembering to ask again. For people that need to find you, I mean, you and I often communicate aside from some on Twitter or an iMessage. I don't think you necessarily want to give your phone number out. So, where can they find you?
On social media, on Twitter and on Instagram, just as Alexander Sims. Sims spelled with one M, because that normally people spell it with two if I don't tell them. But it's a pretty common place nowadays, isn't it, to just chat on social media and do away with phone calls altogether sometimes.
Yeah, you can update us on the Mahindra question at that point. I think it's tweet away, unless they tell you can't. So, based on what I've comprehended as a novice motorsport fan, really, I'm more of an Alex Sims fan, as you know, than I am a motorsport. The difference between GT and Formula E is you guys have teams of drivers on the GT, and that's you keep using the word endurance, so that means to me that you guys are driving forever. I mean, like, you just came back from the Nürburgring, right, this past weekend, where you raced with
yesterday, yeah.
170 other cars, so 4 drivers for each car. I assume you need 4 drivers because your guys, is this like a 24 hours kind of thing? I mean, where you rest and people change?
Yeah, so yesterday it was a 6-hour race actually, and it's around the Nürburgring Nordschleife, which is like a 25-kilometer circuit. So the 170 cars it's unique to that event. Normally it's not that many if we were doing other championships, but we're preparing for the 24 hours, which is at the end of September, around the Nürburgring, which we have 2 cars in the team, and we'll have 7 drivers. So it'll be 3 drivers per car, with one guy who's jumping between both, who will basically end up just after about 6 or 10 hours choose the car that's leading and prioritize that, so that we can the drivers of that car at the front of the race can get a little bit more sleep.
Are the skills that you use when racing in that versus, I mean, heck, you joined Formula E when they went to the next generation car, where they didn't have to do the driver swap or the car swap, where the driver had to jump out, run to the next one, and jump in. So that's an obvious change where you don't have to do that. But are there differences in how you approach each one of those series?
There are many differences, but I guess when you boil it down to the fundamental job that we do in the car, driving it on the limit, it's not massively different. Like a qualifying lap in Formula E, it's not about efficiency, it's just about driving as fast as possible. And at that moment, it's pretty similar to any other race car. The only real difference, as I touched on earlier, is the tyre that we have in Formula E. And if you slide the tyre too much and the car's moving around a bit, it really hurts your lap time, because the tyre overheats very easily. Whereas in a normal race car, the aim actually is to try and have the tyre just teetering on the edge of its grip the whole time. So that's really the only real difference in Formula E in terms of pure driving. Obviously, the Formula E side then has the efficiency side in the race, which is very different. Even to, say, in an endurance race, sometimes you might need to do some fuel saving to try and extend the stint length. But the energy saving we do in Formula E is way more aggressive than that. So, it's pretty different in that sense.
Thanks, Alex. We're 7 minutes over what we had originally planned, so I don't know if you've got more time with us. If anybody else has any questions that we need to we want to cover. No, Jamie,
I see
anything
one
from
question
you?
from Jamie, but
Go ahead,
the
Jamie.
team
Go
boss
ahead.
at Mahindra. But
I mean, I could talk about this stuff forever. Just since you were talking about Mahindra, it seems like Dilbag Gill's is a really cool dude. Is he as cool as everyone says he is? The team principal, Mahindra?
Yes, yeah, no, he's fantastic. The few meetings I've had with him so far, he's been a really nice, passionate, dedicated guy. You know, he lives in Boston, but basically commutes every other week to the UK to work with the team. I dread to think what his number of air miles is, but yeah, no, super nice guy, and really looking forward to working with him.
Yeah, that was when I saw that you were moving to Mahindra. I was like, oh, cool, Mahindra. That's Dilbag's team, because he just seems like every time anything happens, they get the camera on him, and he's
absolutely, yeah, he's super passionate, and yeah, but I think he very much, you know, who he seems on the TV, that's who he is. You know, he's not got this alter ego that he tries to put on a show or anything. He's yeah, super genuine guy.
Excellent. Thanks, Alex. If everybody else doesn't have any questions, I just want to close out and thank you once again for taking the time to hang out with the OC Club and our friends in the Tesla community that have joined us today. It's really cool that you're able to do this, and hopefully we'll see you in the streets of Long Beach sooner than you predict. Or otherwise, the closest thing that would be competing here in the U.S. would be New York. I think is the place, or maybe Mexico City might be closer for us as well. So
true. Yeah.
If they decide to do any of that stuff, but no, I really appreciate you doing that with us.
No, thank you. It's fun to. I mean, so much of my job is centered purely around racing, and okay, we have actually covered quite a lot of racing stuff tonight, but it's very nice to just talk to fellow